Sorry. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RITIS User Group Quarterly Meeting. We're going to get started in just a couple of moments. We're letting folks come into our meeting room. I think we have quite a few folks already here, so we'll get started. Again, on behalf of the Eastern Transportation Coalition, I'd like to welcome you to the RITIS User Group Quarterly Web Meeting. We're very happy that you could join us today. We're just going to go through a couple housekeeping items, and if you've been on these meetings, you know we are using Zoom webinar, so feel free to join with the audio either through your phone or through your computer, whatever works best. This web meeting is being recorded. If you have any questions about the audio or the web, please reach out to Esther. And we will be using the Q&A box for questions, and we'll get to that in a minute. So to ask a question, we're going to ask you to go to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, click on that and type in your question. Those questions will be monitored throughout the meeting, and we will stop periodically at the end of each presentation to go over them. If you'd like to ask a question verbally, we're going to ask that you select the raise your hand feature. That brings you to the top of the list and lets us know that you have either a comment or a question. Sometimes it's a little easier to ask them verbally. Just a reminder, if you do speak, we're going to ask you to mute when you're finished. At this point, I'm pleased to turn this meeting over to Mary Grace Parker. She is the Freight Program Director for the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Mary Grace.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to be here. I welcome you on behalf of Michael and the group here. Looking forward to you having a productive meeting. Few things to catch you up on before we get started. I think the most exciting thing to share with you, Joanne, if you can go to the next slide. Might be a little slow on my end. I'm happy to report that the coalition has a new TISMO director. Not sure how many of you were able to see the email announcement blast that went out, but we're very pleased after an extensive search to have Cheryl Bradley join us as the new TISMO program director, obviously filling big shoes of our colleague Denise Markow, but certainly well positioned to take on this role. Just briefly, for those of you who may not have had a chance to read the release, Cheryl comes to us with some 25 plus years in transportation, working in areas of TISMO, traffic incident management, data. She has a great passion. I was involved in the search committee for the work that she's coming to do, and I think you're all going to enjoy working with her. So she started yesterday. You'll be seeing her in the weeks and months ahead, but very, very pleased to have her on board, and I know you're going to have some great opportunities to work with her in the future. Next. Just to give you a quick update in terms of recent and upcoming events, we had a RITIS user group meeting back in July 27th. That was followed by a Freight Data and Planning Working Group web meeting in September. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Freight Data Planning Working Group meeting, this is where we're focused with our state freight staff and others on looking at innovative ways to use freight data, either by the agencies or thinking about opportunities moving forward with freight data elements, including some of the potential of our traffic data marketplace. Next is our traffic data technical advisory committee meeting, which was held back on October 10th. And then we've got some upcoming invitation or activities. First is our Traveler Information Summit, which will be next week down in North Carolina. I'm excited to be joining our hosts at North Carolina DOT and our co-chairs and the team to be focused on some innovative things and activities that are happening in the quarter with our coalition partners in the area of travel information. That's an invitation-only meeting. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to Joanne or I. Next is the virtual information exchange titled Moving the Needle on CAV Research. This is focused on recent TETC projects for connected vehicles. This is for our agency only use. That'll be on November 9th. Next is our TDM state point of contact meeting. Again, an invitation meeting based on that group construct, and that's November 14th. Finally, coming up, some other events, a virtual event, our MBUF International Truck Pilot Report. We're very excited about that. I've been leading the truck portion of that work with Trish and Jenna, and that focuses on a scalable approach linking road use and payment. And that's based on our pilot report, phase 4, that we released in September. That's on November 21st. There's information in the report is on our website. But again, we'll be sending out invitations broadly because we certainly want people to understand what's happening in that work area. Next is the RITIS Product Enhancement Working Group meeting on November 30th. Then our Delaware Valley region will be hosting an in-person exchange with the virtual reality TIM training session. Again, this is focused on our agency partners. It's an invitation event. There's one that just occurred back on November 2nd, which was the Delaware Valley one. And then on December 6th, our Southern Regional Hogs Group will be meeting for that same purpose. And finally, last but not least, we're rounding out the year with our RITIS workshop on December 5th. So a lot of events coming up and a lot of opportunities to participate. So with that, let me turn this over to Jesse. And I will have to step off at 1:30 to do some capstone work, but I will look forward to hearing how the rest of the meeting goes. So thank you. And I also thank you for the opportunity to let me assist here in Denise's absence and while we were getting Cheryl on board. So happy to have been part of this.
Thanks, Mary Grace. Appreciate all the updates. Lots going on, as always. If you go to the next slide here, we can walk through our agenda for the day. So we've already accomplished our welcome and introductions. First up, we'll have Michael Pack talking about the status of some of the enhancements and major updates to various tools, including some demos of those new features. Then we have a really interesting spotlight presentation, creating custom congestion exhibits with lane diagrams and aerials for a downtown San Antonio freeway feasibility study project. I think some really interesting techniques that folks can take away from that presentation. Then we'll go into our RITIS Product Enhancement Working Group update, including some future enhancements, and close with our usual user feedback Q&A session. So everybody, as the presentations are going, think about your questions and comments so we can have some good discussion throughout the meeting. Next slide, please. So to introduce our speakers today, Michael Pack is the director of the CATT lab at the University of Maryland, where he works to make transportation data more easily accessible and usable by ops, planners, and researchers. And he had previously worked at the University of Virginia and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Happy as always to have Michael with us. Next, our spotlight presenter is Jaimie Sloboden. Jaimie has 30 years of traffic and transportation experience with industry-leading projects, manuals, and training to best utilize available data to understand cause and effect and support micro-simulation modeling applications. He was a principal author in developing simulation guidance for guidelines for Minnesota and also Florida, as well as a supporting author for FHWA's Traffic Analysis Tools Guidelines. Last but not least, we have Bob Frey today. Bob is the Director of Project-Oriented Planning in the Office of Transportation Planning at Massachusetts DOT. Bob's worked in a variety of roles in MassDOT's planning office for over 2 decades. Most recently, one of his focus areas has been vehicle probe and GPS data, and he manages MassDOT's RITIS contract. So he's been really involved in a lot of different coalition efforts and meetings for the last several years. So happy to have him with us today. Next slide. So as always, really grateful for tons of participants. I see we're up over 100 on the meeting here today. So just great as always to see folks from all up and down the East Coast and really all over the country at this point. So thank you to everyone who's here participating with us today. Next. So with that, we're going to get into some polls, and I believe I will turn that over to Joanna to go through these polls.
Okay, great. So if you've been on our calls, thank you, Jesse. If you've been on our meetings, We do have a few just to give us an understanding of who's participating. Our first one is, how often do you attend RITIS user group web meetings? So if you can just take a moment and let us know, that helps us and helps our presenters understand the level of participation in the people who are here today. All right, we'll just give it another minute, not minute, another 5 seconds or so. All right, we're going to close the poll. We'll show you the results. Okay, so it looks like we have a good percentage, half participate on a very regular basis, and then it's pretty evenly split between those who don't come once or twice a year, and happy to have that 20% here for the first time. All right, we're going to go on to the next one. Poll number 2. All right. So how do you use the data and visualization results from RITIS? If you could choose one, you may use more than one, but if you can select the one you use most often, that would be great. So do you use the results directly? Do you download the data and use it in your agency's tools? Or do you do a little bit of both? Right, I'm going to give it about another 5 seconds. Okay, we're going to end that poll and we'll show you those results. So as you can see, about half of you do a little bit of both, and then slightly more use it directly from RITIS as opposed to just downloading it for your agency's tools. And then finally, we have one more poll in the beginning, and then we'll be having some additional polls later in the meeting. So who is your primary audience for sharing information that was developed from RITIS or the PDA suite? Again, we're going to ask you to choose one. We know that it's probably more than one, but most often. If folks are still voting, I'll give another few seconds. Okay. And we're going to close that poll and we'll share those results. Okay, there's looks like quite a few for peers, and then management and executive leadership. Elected officials and general public, not as much, but we still have representatives for that too. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse.
Great, thanks, Joanna. Always interesting to see the results of those polls, help us understand how people are using the tools. So with that, I will hand it over to Michael Pack to talk about some of the latest enhancements that have been deployed, including getting into some demos. So looking forward to that. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Jesse. There we go. Share screen. And I think we are in business, but someone let me know if that's not the case. So I'm going to start off today by going over some of the enhancements that have, some of the major enhancements have been deployed since the last time we got together. Some of these are bigger than others, but they all matter in some way. So the first is standardizing color schemes between congestion scan, the brand new speed bins tool that was deployed last quarter, and then the trend maps tool. So we had a lot of really positive feedback from the speed bins tool and the particular color scheme that it uses, which is a little bit darker colors, more obvious to see what some of the changes are. And then for the lowest color bin, you have a purplish color. And so we've now standardized those color schemes. So they're the default for each of the tools, including the trend map and the congestion scan tool. However, if you don't like those colors, you can always click on the bins here, and you can choose your own color and put in whatever you want there. I think the biggest thing that we've done since the last time we got together was we've implemented this new route road selection tool. So if you've ever used the Probe Data Analytics Suite before, you know that when you go to choose a road or choose a query, if you're trying to look at one particular road, you have to type in the name of the road. You then choose the road that comes back from the search that best matches what you're looking for. Then you have to start choosing the beginning and ending points, and it can be a challenge sometimes. So what we've done now is added a new option within the Probe Data Analytics Suite for choosing a route. So it's going to be the second tab that you'll see in the tool. When you click it, it's going to give you some instructions. It says click here to start segment search. You do that, and then over on the map, you can zoom in using your scroll wheel, and you can click a starting point, and then you can click like a midway point, and then another point. You can add a whole bunch of different points and essentially build a route, and the tool will automatically connect all of the XD segments between the clicks that you make. So this, I think, will significantly enhance many people's experiences with the tools. Gives you a little update of the number of segments and the number of miles that you selected as you do that. Some tips, though, for using this. It's really important to zoom in close on the map when you are selecting starting points and ending points, because the system is sensitive enough that it knows if you're clicking on the right side of the road or the left side of the road, north, south, east, west, what have you. So make sure you've actually clicked the right side before you move on. Otherwise, the system's going to think you're on the wrong side of the road and reroute you and try to come back, and things get kind of complicated. Note that every once in a while, if you're trying to go from one road to another road, maybe continuing a route, it takes an exit ramp or something like that, sometimes the segment links don't always match up right exactly where that ramp is located and where that offshoot is. So you might see a tiny bit of extra route that is selected, but don't worry, the result should still be pretty solid. So I think that's the most exciting thing. The second thing is getting deployed next week, and that's the dashboard sharing functionality. So for this one, this deals with the Probe Data Analytics Suite, the dashboards that you can customize for yourself. In the past, those dashboards have only been visible by you, and you couldn't really share those with anybody. So imagine you're an engineer, and you really want to, your manager or an executive in your office wants to have a dashboard. It'd be difficult for you to create that for them. Well, now you can do that. So you create your dashboards, and there's a share button that you click, and it'll bring up all the dashboards that are available to you. It'll tell you who created them, how many widgets are in them, who's the owner of those dashboards. And then you can go in and you can designate to share dashboards with other people. And you can share the dashboards with individuals, or you can share with everybody in your organization just by typing at mdot.gov or california.gov or whatever your email domain is within your organization. Then everyone will be able to see your dashboard if they so choose, which is a really neat feature, I think. It's going to make it a lot easier for people to leverage these dashboards within your organization. So expect that to be deployed next week, and we'll send out a little email about this. But check the What's New tab in the tools, and you'll see all the release notes about what's going on there. We also just deployed some new work zone reporting templates. The work zone reporting templates have several different concepts and templates that you can download for, say, like a weekly work zone performance summary that takes into account different measures that you can export pretty easily from the Probe Data Analytics Suite. Here's an example of one we did down in Florida. Let's see, here's another example, just a different visualization technique for conveying information. Here's another iteration of the work zone performance report, where here we're exporting some of the congestion scans showing multiple days of congestion, highlighting where the work zone was. And there's just a bunch of them. And you can access all of these by going to the reporting template section of the RITIS website. It's also available at the bottom of the Probe Data Analytics Suite. You can access it there. And within that, there's a series of templates, a series of tutorials that walk you through how to run the queries to export data into these templates, and it gives you design sheets and style guides. And we're not going to go over all of this today, but at a later RITIS meeting, we'll have John Allen walk through and actually describe how you can use these templates in more detail. Here's an example of some of the how-to guides over here on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, so yeah, some more detailed overview and training will come in a future meeting, but also there's a smaller group of people who've been supporting us with what's called an automated work zone design review. So imagine the templates that we just showed you from John Allen. Imagine being able to click a few buttons and those templates are automatically populated with data from the suite, so you don't have to go in and run a bunch of queries and do a bunch of analysis on your own. We've been working on some designs for that. On October 31st, that is our design review meeting. Anyone who's participated in prior design review and for this particular topic has already received an invite for this meeting. If you're on the call today and you're interested in learning more about this or participating and providing feedback, and you have not gotten an invite, please send me an email. If Esther or Joanna can type in my email address in the chat, I would appreciate it. We'll make sure you get an invite as well. Within RITIS, there are a series of APIs that exist for programmers and developers that don't really want to use the interface that we have for the user interface for querying data and visualizing data. They want to build their own tools. They've got their own applications, their own dashboards. So a good number of you subscribe to the RITIS API that allows you to programmatically access queries, download data, and do your own thing with it. Well, we've just made a series of enhancements to this API, and we are going to keep the old API running for another few months, but we're going to get rid of it before too long. And we need people who are using the API to switch over to this new API. There's a lot of enhancements that we've made for speed limit-based performance metrics and error reporting. There's a lot better documentation that's built into all of this. But I think one of the bigger things is that this update is setting us up for being able to support XD segments and TS segments from other vendors, like the sub TMC level data. So it's really important that everyone take the time to switch over to this API before we get rid of the old one. And everyone who is an API subscriber has received an email about this already. If you're interested in getting access to the new API and you never have before, again, send me an email and we will make sure we can get you or your agency trained up on how to use that thing. For those of you who use trip analytics from us, we've just added a new feature to custom draw your own study areas directly within the trip analytics app. So this is a major step forward that reduces a lot of wasted time and having to go to a third party and draw a study area and then import it into the tool. Now there's dozens and dozens of other enhancements that we've made to this tool as well. This is very active in development, at least. So go and check out the release notes from this tool to see everything that's new, but this is the biggest new feature that's just been deployed. With signal analytics, there's a few important enhancements. One of them is being able to rank and filter the results based on not just the measures that come back here in the top, like the percent arrival on green or the vehicle counts, but also being to rank and order things by turning movement, approach, or clustering all of the turning movements and approaches within a single intersection together, being able to group those things within the list. All of that's new. You can go and play with that. Now, some big things that are in development but have not yet been deployed that I wanted everyone to know about is we're working on a RITIS best practices work group. Now, we're really excited in that Oregon DOT took the initiative on their own to put together their version of a RITIS best practices workbook. And we've borrowed a lot of their ideas and concepts, and we're putting together a more generic version. It can be used by other agencies that talk broadly about RITIS and some of the, what all the data sources within RITIS mean and how you can use them and what types of queries are relevant for, certain types of applications. It's a really neat workbook or handbook that's being put together. And we expect this to be available sometime in the next couple of months, and we will deploy this directly to the RITIS website. And we thank the Oregon Department of Transportation for spurring this on and helping to get this going. We've also been working with some other third-party data providers to make RITIS more multimodal. Most of you know that it already has a lot of roadway data on it. It already has the ability to integrate transit data, but now what we've been working on is maritime data as well. So this is an actual screenshot of the RITIS website that I took a couple of nights ago, where you can actually see vessel traffic moving into the Chesapeake Bay and going into the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. These are actual locations of vessels that get updated every 30 seconds or so. Here I'm now moving down and looking at the Gulf Coast, and here's all of the vessels moving in and around the Gulf area. If you zoom in, you can actually see vessels docked and going inland as well. In fact, here I've zoomed into the Memphis area, and you can see vessels going up and down the Mississippi River. Some of these are barges, all sorts of different traffic there. So this is in progress. Now, this is a third-party data source. So, if agencies want access to, vessel traffic, we'll have to talk to this third party to see what we can do with respect to licensing this data and making it available to others. But I think it could be really useful, especially if we start looking at multimodal bottlenecks, port operations, and other types of freight movement around the country. And we're taking this a step further, and we're also working to add in flight data. So here we're showing, I think this is the FedEx facility in Memphis. These are planes that are on the ground getting loaded up. I think this one right here is a plane that's getting ready to take off and go down the runway. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's the aerial imagery added on top of it, so you can see all the flights getting ready to depart here. Here I've zoomed out a little bit, state of Tennessee. You can see all the flights that are in the air and on the ground at the same time. They're moving about. And as you zoom out, this was a live view of all the air traffic that we were aware of at, during a particular minute of the day when I took this particular screenshot. So all of that is going to help us to, look more at multimodal transportation operations and goods movement. Now, the next thing I want to talk about that's in development right now is user delay cost volume related improvements. So if you're not familiar with user delay cost is a value that's used in a lot of the probe data analytics applications. It's definitely used in the user delay cost tool, where you can actually just go and look at the amount of vehicle hours of delay and the amount of user delay cost broken down by freight vehicles or passenger vehicles. There's also several dashboards in the probe data analytics suite that either use user delay cost as a direct metric that's displayed in them, or it's a metric that is used in some other calculations. And if you use the causes of congestion graph, where we tell you what amount of the congestion that's out there is related to crashes versus weather versus work zones versus signals versus just it's recurrent delay. User delay cost is used there as well, and it's even used a little bit in the bottleneck ranking tool. So it's a very important measure. What we've found after extensive studying over the last 6 or 9 months is that there are some limits to this user delay cost algorithm that we have in place right now. First of all, you've heard me say this a million times during these presentations, but we don't get volume updates from our users all that often. We need to have some sort of volume profile on the roadway that covers every TMC segment. Additionally, the volume profiles that we use, they're just not, they may not be sliced and diced in the right way. We're not getting real-time volume from anybody that is, ubiquitous enough to cover all the segments. Now, with the volume profiles that we get, we have to implement what's called a volume limiting formula. So when the roads start to get congested, the volumes should actually go down from what they would be at their maximum point during like a rush hour or something like that. If the speeds drop to 5 miles per hour, there's just not as many cars and trucks that are moving down a roadway as you would normally have. And so many years ago, when we first implemented the user delay cost algorithm, we implemented something called a volume limiting algorithm that said, okay, well, when the speeds drop to certain levels, you also reduce the volume, and you keep doing that in some sort of a function. So that volume limiting function that we had wasn't perfect, right? Nothing is, but we're finding some issues with it. We believe it over limits the amount of traffic that is out on the roadway. But also, we don't have a good understanding of how many lanes there are out on every single roadway. So we've been estimating the number of lanes that are out there, and that plays into the volume issue as well. And then another limit is the passenger vehicle occupancy is unchangeable. It's a fixed constant in the tools today. I can't remember, it might be like 1.2 passengers per vehicle or something like that. And it's just fixed, and that changes across the country. So what we're doing now is we're reevaluating everything within the user delay cost algorithm. We're making some significant improvements to the volume limiting equations. We're also updating the number of lanes on every single segment by going in and doing some conflation with OpenStreetMaps data, OSM data. And we're also adding the ability for users to dynamically change the passenger vehicle occupancy. So I guess the default right now is 1.7. but you'll be able to go in and change it just like you can change the value of time for passenger or commercial vehicles. So those are some of the things we're working on right now. And I think the biggest impact here is really this volume limiting algorithm. So the way this works is there's an assumption that's made that as congestion increases and the speeds drop, the vehicles can essentially follow closer, especially at low speeds. At higher speeds, you should have greater separation between the vehicles. So, for example, maybe trucks don't follow quite as closely as trucks do, or at least they're not supposed to when they're out on the roadway. So what we're doing is we are implementing algorithms that take this into account, driver behavior. We're estimating the spacing of passenger and commercial vehicles in general. And then we're calculating the total lane length consumed by each vehicle. And then we're computing the number of passengers and commercial vehicles on each segment, computing the number of passenger and commercial vehicles traversing the segment. And then we're comparing, what we've done is we've compared what we're calling a car following model with the historical limiting algorithm that we used to use. And we're trying to figure out what is more indicative of what's really happening out on the roadway. So what we've done is we've implemented in a test environment in the CATT lab, we've implemented this new volume limiting algorithm that we're calling a car following model. And we've gone out and we've found ground truth volume data from around the state of Maryland, and we're looking at other parts of the country as well. And we start off just by looking at a short period of time in May of 2019, and we compared the user delay cost values that you would get if you were using ground truth ATR volume data. And we compared that to what you get in the volume and the UDC tool today to what you would get with using this new algorithm that we're putting forth. And here's the results of that. So if you use the ground truth, real world volume data that's out there on functional class 1, and you use that in the algorithm, you'd see for this particular roadway about $19,000 in user delay costs. This is an interstate. Using the current probe data analytics volume limiting method, you would have only seen about $6,000 in user delay cost here. Our new method gets us closer to what ground truth really is. This is more apparent on interstates than it is on lower classes of roadways, arterials. You can see that there's just not as big a difference. And so what we've gone in and we've done some analysis using a few different corridors around the country, using the old algorithm and the new algorithm just to see what would happen. So here in Hudson County, on I-95, you've got the current probe data analytics user delay cost for a period of time, and then the new method. And you can see that it almost doubles the amount of user delay cost that's out there. So we've essentially been undercounting the amount of user delay that's out on functional road class 1. On FRC3 roads, you can see there's less of a difference, but it is still a little bit better than what it used to be. So we've analyzed this on several different types of roadways. That's Hudson County. Let's go in here and let's look at the same roadway and compare by day of week. So we got Monday through Sunday. And essentially what happens is you can see it's always generally undercounting user delay cost. But on days when you have more traffic, which is going to be Thursdays and Fridays in general, you see that the difference is a little more pronounced. And the general theory is just the more congested the roads are, the more this plays into consideration. So here is by day of week, FRC1. So you can see a significant difference for FRC1 road classes. by day of week. I'm going to move on. Here's a FRC3 roadway. And you can see it's less of a big deal here. Both results are almost identical. And here we're looking at by hour of day as well. And you can see again, when there's more congestion on the roadway, that's when the differences are more pronounced. I-95 again, by hour of day. So I think you get the picture. So in general, this UDC algorithm that we're getting ready to roll out here in the next quarter, we believe it's going to increase the UDC values that you've been seeing in the past, especially on your interstates, and especially when, of course, there's more congestion. So the magnitude of the change is going to depend a little bit on the queries that you're running, the day of week, time of day, and of course, the severity of the congestion as well. And we're expecting to roll this out in another couple of months or so, and you'll be able to play around with it and see what the values look like in your neck of the woods. So that's all there is with the user delay cost algorithm. There are a few critical reminders I want to give everyone before we move on to our keynote speaker. The first is a reminder of these API changes that we just made. We're going to be sunsetting the old API early next year, so you need to be starting now and switching over to the new API. Also, regardless of the changes we're making to the UDC algorithms, we still need your volume data. We need volume data from each state updated at least once a year. If you have not given us new volume data, please reach out. This is something we need to be working on. It impacts cause of congestion, it impacts user delay, and it will ultimately impact our energy analytics tools as well once those get deployed. And then we'll be talking about the enhancement working group a little bit later. They're going to be meeting later in November. So I think that's all I have. If there aren't any questions, I guess we can move on. I'll turn it back to you, Jesse.
Sure, thanks, Michael. I think we have like 1 minute. So there was a bunch of back and forth in the chat. I think the question was mostly answered, but just wanted to have you confirm. Folks were just kind of asking, which tools is the new selection feature under? And I think after some back and forth, it was sort of clarified that you need to be looking under the XD option to get that new selection feature. But just, I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about that, and if it's available under certain tools or kind of all the tools generally that use some kind of, map selection.
Any tool that would have allowed you to search for a single road now has that road search function about it.
Okay, great. And that's already turned on, right? Like, I think that was confirmed that that's live. And my question about that too, which I think you sort of noted, is that this is to select for one road, right? Like, you can't necessarily stitch together like US 1 to I-95 or something like that, or could you do that?
Well, you can actually build a route.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you can't select roads that never cross and don't.
Sure.
Cross. You want to do a contiguous.
Right. Okay. But if you had like a commute trip that follows a certain road to another one, you could look at that.
Yes. Yeah, you can.
Cool. Nice. All right. Perfect. Well, I think that puts us right on time here. So I guess we can move on to our spotlight presentation here. I'm guessing too, Michael, that you would love to hear some feedback on that new user delay algorithm once it goes live. So hopefully lots of folks are interested in that, and we'll play around and see what those results look like and give us some good feedback.
Cool. Yes.
All right. So next up, we have our spotlight presentation. So I will turn it over to Jaimie Sloboden to get into that presentation. So Jaimie, all yours. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, I think you need to close yours.
Yeah, Michael, you need to stop sharing.
There we go.
Did everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
You can see it? No.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to present to you today. What I'm about to show you is going to seem a lot smaller scale than what everything Michael just went through. RITIS is a great tool, and it does a lot of really big system type work. And so I'm going to take it down to a little bit different scale. That kind of new content just based on watching Michael, what he had to say. All right, let's make sure this is working. There we go. There we go. So today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what the San Antonio Downtown Freeway project was about. I'll talk specifically about the data sources from RITIS that we used. I'm going to talk you through a demonstration of how I prepared these congestion exhibits. And then finally, there's a little subset, but it's already something that's part of RITIS, but another way of producing, which is a duration of congestion exhibit. And then I'll give some other applications of how we use the data. So for those of you familiar with downtown San Antonio, the mall or the Alamo is right inside the core area. It's a really complex system with 6 different freeways that all come together, commingle and box. It's very complex. You have I-10, I-35, I-37, US 281, and US 90 all come together, kind of create a box. The TxDOT is actually looking for kind of a long-term project here to develop short-term improvements as well as a long-term vision. In some cases, the original freeway is still what's in operation when it's from its original construction in the 60s, and then some portions of it have been rebuilt in the 90s. There is significant congestion in the area, and then there's other areas that have kind of high crash issues as well. So to help kind of facilitate the discussion on the feasibility, we took really good advantage of the roadway analytics congestion scan. So just to be clear about the tool that we used in the roadway analytics tab, focusing on the congestion scan. So all the data that I'm talking about actually came from that source. And so everyone's, I think, pretty familiar with kind of the screenshot that you get once you select a route. It comes back with, a scan of 24-hour traffic, if that's what you select. You get red is bad, dark red showing kind of congestion, green is good, and you have the scale down below. Moving forward, we selected a single day for this exercise. The single day was in November. It coincided with a number of traffic counts that were conducted as part of the effort to prepare a simulation model. We also had boots on the ground and people driving around on that day, and as well as surrounding days, to kind of observe traffic and see what was going on. So there's a lot of data points associated with this, so everything we talked about was focused on that day. So moving forward, to get to the exhibit that I'm going to show you, we download the data into Excel, and when you pull it in from Excel, it kind of looks like this. You have your columns and row heights are pretty standardized. We pulled the data down in 15-minute increments and by segment. And so when you zoom in a little bit closer, this is kind of what it starts to look like. And then finally, and I just want to be clear, that's the data we're going to. So now I'm going to jump into how we create the exhibit. So the exhibit that we're going to create in the end looks like this. At the top of the screen is going to be the congestion data. There's a lane diagram down below and with some other observations. So the process to do that is to start with an aerial. We create a lane exhibit to scale longitudinally using a vector graphic type graphics program. In this case, I use Illustrator, but MicroStation or AutoCAD would be a good application. You want to have that kind of control of being able to specify line lengths, especially to get things to scale. We take the data and we transpose it to align with the directionality of the exhibit, and then we scale and combine. So that's kind of the process, and we can circle back to the process if we need to. So the section I'm focusing in on, you know, we had 4 legs, and so we had to do this exhibit I'm showing you a number of times. But for the demonstration purposes, I'm taking you through northbound I-37. And the Keynote map on the side, you can see it's kind of highlighted in red. It's kind of the eastern side of the downtown, kind of drives you past the Towers of America, Alamo Dome, and as gets you close to the Alamo as well. So the lane exhibit, as you get closer, it's an exaggerated exhibit where you have the lane widths are wider, so you can see kind of operationally what's happening. The distances are to a scale in this, you know, so everything's relative, and it kind of gives you a good frame of reference. We include traffic volume information. In this case, it's peak hour information, as well as kind of the labeling of ramps and roadways that you're connecting to. This is an exhibit I've been using for my entire career. We started drawing these up for freeway studies, bottleneck removal studies back in the 90s. And then the thing we did with that, and some of it's kind of the same here, but we didn't have the data that we have available like that RITIS is producing, which makes this, I think, a lot more powerful. So once we have the lane exhibit, then we need to take the congestion scan information and then transpose it. So in the case to make the exhibit work left to right, for presentation purposes, it's kind of handy to make your road go from left to right or right to left. We transpose the information like that. And then kind of the new application that we bring into it is we take advantage of the traffic counts segments. They have a dimension in terms of miles. And then we provide a scale. In this case, you see the width multiplier. You multiply 0.35 miles by 20, you get 7. So that becomes kind of the column width. And in this case, we created a macro within Excel that allowed us to kind of game and change the width based on a different multiplier. And then we came up with a slick math way to make sure that it was easier just to bring it into scale into our vector graphic. So that's kind of the mechanism to kind of convert that. And so then what the end result is kind of a schematic alignment graphic that aligns well with the congestion scan heat map. So a couple things about it. The other thing we do is that once you bring it into Excel, you can kind of change the color coding of the speeds, you know, using conditional formatting. In this case, we added our purple jam color. Purple jam is less than 20 miles an hour and helps differentiate where severe congestion is. And it's always fun to say in a meeting to say purple jam. So that kind of tells you kind of how we get to that point. And then once we have that in play, then we can start to use this tool in this exhibit to kind of understand and identify what are the causes of congestion. So in this area of northbound I-37, you know, where we see the major congestion where it's purple towards the right, we also can note that there's a lot of right to left weaving. And as we know, anything that requires vehicles to cross multiple lanes is a significant cause of congestion. So there's this, you know, a fair amount of traffic that's trying to get to I-35, and a lot of it is actually getting on at these ramps. And it doesn't take a lot of vehicles to cause congestion, and I think that's kind of verified here. Moving backwards, we have a number of type A weaves. A lot of them are very short. So that's where, you know, traffic gets on and it mixes with traffic that's trying to get off at the very next ramp. And in this case, most of the traffic is kind of mixing. So that kind of contributes to it as well. And then finally, we have a lot of demand in the morning, and this is a morning peak, by the way. You know, that's just kind of feeding it. So it's kind of fuel to the fire. So in a very quick amount of time, here, we're able to kind of pull together a lot of information that gets everyone kind of level set in whether it's a design setting. And in this case, we used these exhibits, and I'll show more of them, in a workshop with the consultant team. And there was about 30 of us in the room tackling this project. Everyone got onto the same page very quickly about what the congestion is, where it is, and what are the causes of it. And that also lends itself to the potential solutions to start investigating. We haven't taken this project and these exhibits out to the public yet, but I have done similar exhibits on a project for downtown Minneapolis, for example, where I did the same illustrations and we had similar congestion data, and we took it through a stakeholder group and got everyone on board very quickly and intuitively with understanding what was going on. And it kind of confirmed what everyone knew what was happening, but they had better understanding as to why. What I like about this is that, the pictures, I think, in the diagrams speak to people, the arrows, people can kind of relate to the movements. They drive it, they understand that there's congestion there, and now they start to really verify their experience. As opposed to like, well, the level of service is this, and that doesn't necessarily translate well as to why. So I think that's been the real power of these exhibits throughout my career, but I think it's really become much stronger now that we have this kind of data on a whole scale area. In the past, it was kind of limited to, well, you do speed runs and you can maybe get a couple, and you would maybe get a couple of data points, but it wouldn't be this robust. And then before this data became widely available, I did a lot of work in Minnesota, and they have a lot of surveillance there, so you could actually build it up. But as I went to other states, it just wasn't as available. So now, as I work with Michael Baker around the country, in most states have access to this information, we're bringing this to the table. So from a nerd standpoint, I'm totally geeked out that we have this because it's fun, and I know how hard it was to do it before, and this is way easier. So just to give you some more examples, again, this is kind of how we started packaging this project. So just to show you, some real complexity. So this is kind of the I-35 piece on the north side. It's also further complicated that it has an upper and lower freeway. So the grayed out area is the lower deck, and we're showing you the congestion that's in the non-shaded area. And then this is the area in the lower deck, and you can see kind of a dramatic difference about how those two flip together. So it speaks to kind of what are the challenges going on between these two roads. Another segment, there's a big bottleneck. You can see a lot of the, in this case, it's going from right to left. This is the I-10 westbound heading towards US 90. As I-37 merges in, it causes a problem, very clearly stated here. Again, this is now in the going northbound on the I-10 I-35 common section, very congested, and doesn't matter which road you're on, upper or lower. But again, you can start to see the complexity of having 6 freeways coming together, just seeing all the movements taking place. So, real quickly, this is another exhibit trying to get everyone kind of level set again about where the magnitude of the problems are. We took the same congestion data, linked it back to GIS, and just kind of summed the hours of the day that are below 45 miles an hour. There's some better renditions of this, but we do have some areas in the upper left-hand corner in the Y, they call it, where the congestion is almost 12 to 15 hours a day. And then other places, actually, it's kind of green. It's not a lot of congestion. However, with the higher speeds and so forth that are associated with the less congestion, there are fatality issues with crashes. On the kind of the west side, that's a common section between I-10 and I-35. And then you can see where it's kind of green on the east side, that's strictly I-37. One of the potential solutions is actually to reroute I-35 down the I-37 piece and move them over that way. So, at a glance, we have a lot of really good access to information and an easy way to use it. So as mentioned in my bio, I've spent a good portion of my career working with FHWA, MnDOT, and other states on traffic simulations. And here's a case study, not in Texas, but this happens to be in Florida, but I think it's illustrative, where we had a VISM model calibration. This is the East Selman Freeway down in Tampa. Traffic is going from top to bottom, and this is the morning peak. So this is the inbound peak heading into downtown Tampa. On the left was the speed data by segments, and then on the right is the modeled speeds. So you have a VISM model. The segments don't necessarily align perfectly, but you can kind of match them here. And in this case, this was a previous model that was done, and it was declared as calibrated. And the calibration was strictly based on the travel time from end to end. But really what was missing was the bottleneck that's in the box below really was not replicated. And so that was a big piece missing. So basically the total travel time statistics said it was calibrated, but in reality, it really wasn't. And I'll show you how we came up with that. So our revised and updated model, using the data and comparing the congestion, and oh, by the way, the previous group did not use the field speed this way. They were just using strictly travel time. So they weren't looking at any kind of heat plots to compare it to. So that being said, we've updated the model and we're able to kind of replicate the congestion. And that's a picture of that congestion spot, which is kind of a tight area where the reverse express lanes goes over the main line, creates kind of like a really narrowing effect that does impact how drivers perform. So then finally the travel time was okay, and we were calibrated for the right reason. So it's a good case study on microsimulation, but I think it also illustrates well about how you can use the congestion heat map and really do that visual comparison to replicate bottlenecks. So with that, that's what I got. I hope there's some questions, and happy to entertain any discussion.
Thank you, Jaimie. Definitely really interesting presentation. I think, you're in the right place. Lots of data nerds here who really enjoy all of this stuff. So hopefully everybody is, thinking about everything you just heard. And I think if you have questions, we haven't had any come in yet, but maybe folks can continue to think and feel free to put those into the Q&A. Joanna, do you want to move on to the next one, or do we have any time for discussion?
I think we're going to move on, but if people do have questions, we will most, be happy to.
Yeah, Jaimie, if you're able to stay on to the end of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. And
thank you.
Again, if folks have further questions and thoughts, feel free to put them in the Q&A there.
Appreciate it.
That, I guess, if you can stop sharing your screen, we'll move on to Bob Frey talking about the RITIS product enhancement working group update and future enhancements. So even more enhancements coming our way. Thank you, Bob. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Jesse. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so Joanna, you're going to do the slides for me. Thank you. RITIS Product Enhancement Working Group. What is our mission? We're a pooled fund group to pay for all these great improvements and new features in RITIS, and to help the CATT lab figure out where to focus their resources and what projects to prioritize. We try to have a steady funding stream and share information between DOTs, MPOs, and other agencies, and help each other out. And here's, well, next slide, Joanna, I guess. Here's many of you have seen this before. I won't go through it in detail. Michael's already talked about a lot of these. This is just kind of a status chart of what we've done, and we're going to talk about what is on the way as well. Michael mentioned the dashboards deploying next week. What else on here of note? The map click corridor selection, that's now the road and route selection, that big advancement that Michael was talking about as well. But again, one of the main points here is none of this is cheap. We need assistance from other DOTs. So this is where I make my plug for funding. So far, we've had 5 DOTs participate in funding these improvements: Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Virginia, and my own Massachusetts DOT. But we're always looking for more to participate. I will be contacting some of you to see what your positions are in terms of available resources, and hopefully we can keep funding all these great improvements. So let's talk a little bit about some of the next improvements. So next slide, please, Joanna. Okay. So we need to think about what is best to do next. We've got a lot of options that we'll need to reprioritize some of these. So let's go through some examples. Next slide. Okay, advanced time selection in the probe data analytics. Here you can identify specific holidays or special events. You can exclude these if you're looking for average conditions, or you could isolate them if you've got one or more of these recurring every year. It can help in planning for special events or holiday traffic. Next slide. Okay, road weather integration. Integrating weather information and road conditions onto the congestion scans and the trend maps to see the effects. Maybe even include that in the bottleneck ranking as well, because we all know that weather has a huge effect on congestion. So this could be a useful feature as well. Next slide. Dynamic message signs. We could identify their locations on the schematics and see their effect on speeds and congestion. Next slide. Being able to customize color schemes and share them across your organization, not just for the user delay cost, but maybe other tools as well, like the speed bins that Michael mentioned, how popular those are. Next slide. Here's just an example of the detail and the variety that could be achieved. Users can establish and save their own favorite color set. Next. Here's another one, XD segments for bottleneck ranking. Here you could have an alternate and more detailed specificity than just using the TMC segments for reporting. As many of us know, that the TMC segments are often too long for the locations that you're looking at. So using XD or similar sub TMC segment could be very useful. Next slide. Publishing tools for dashboards, being able to embed those in reports. Michael mentioned that John Allen has done a lot of work with this, and you've seen some presentations in previous meetings. This more advancement with these and it being able to embed them in reports, I think can be very useful for people. Next slide. API enhancements. Again, more with the XD segments, adding XD support to road search, adding merge time performance measures for the travel time tools, map 21 support for the reporting requirements there for the performance measures, more support for dashboard tools. Don't know what the cost would be yet. We may talk about that. Next slide. ATS-PM, automatic traffic signal performance measures. This is something Georgia DOT does a great job at, and you can really get down to a very detailed catalog of intersections and see how they're performing. And this is something that potentially we could put into RITIS if people are interested. Next slide. And you can see here many other options here, other possibilities. I won't read the whole list here, but EJ and equity, we know that's increasingly important now to all DOTs. WIM stations for freight metrics are big too. Operations impact and analytics for return on investment. Transit is important as well for many, possibly incorporating GTFS feeds and other metrics. So that's just, these are just some additional things that we could do. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of possibilities. Next slide. So time for a poll. So we'd like to hear from all of you on what you would like to see added into RITIS. This can be something you just saw, something you've come across in your work. Would it be useful to do this function or have this feature? Just to be clear, we're not voting here. This poll is just one way to gauge interest in a particular feature or upgrade to see if it's workable. There are no bad answers here. At this point, we're just collecting ideas for what people would like to see added into the platform. So this is free form. You can write in whatever you want. We'll give it a few minutes here, and we'll take a look at all these responses and discuss them at our next enhancements working group meeting, which will be November 30th. Joanna, is it possible to go back to that list while the poll is on?
Sure. Let me get to that slide.
Just back up 2 or 3, or even one.
No, not that one. I'm sorry. I'm
Nope,
trying to
next, go one ahead, one more.
This one?
Nope, one more. Yeah, keep scrolling through. Yeah, so these are all examples again that nope, it's right before the poll, so it's way
Oh,
at the
okay.
end.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, there you go. Many others. Yep. So there's all, just to give people an idea of what we talked about. There's all of these. There's the color schemes, dynamic message sign integration.
We're looking for new ideas too. So if there's something
right
that we haven't talked about that you just want, or it doesn't have to be a completely new feature too. It can be something that hasn't been working for you and you don't know what the new feature is, but man, this one thing just doesn't work. Can we come up with a better solution? Tell us that.
Right, exactly. And who knows, there may be something that you think can't be done or is difficult to do now, and we may already have a better way of doing that. So that's useful as well to hear those situations.
Looks like we still have some responses coming in. Is there anything else? While people put this information in, is there anything else you wanted to, do we want to go to the question for Jaimie, or do we want to go to
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if we maybe want to, we did get a question that came in about Jaimie's presentation. While we give folks a little more time to type here. The question was, have you used RITIS for cluster calibration? And if so, how? And I think I was wondering, and some of us were also wondering, what is cluster calibration? So a little background, you know, for those of us who may not be as familiar with what that is.
Yeah, so the answer is no, I've not done that yet. But basically what the direction that the traffic analysis toolbox has gone into is to take, let's say, a year's worth of data and try and come up with what is the most representative day. So you're looking at a cluster of information to kind of extract that out. At least that's the way I understand the question being asked. And so that exercise is a big statistical evaluation to kind of come up with that typical day. I guess the person that asked the question, is that what they were looking for?
I think so. That sounds about right. Yeah. And so they asked if you've used RITIS to aid in something like that.
No, but I'm anxious to try it. So that's next on the list. That's a relatively kind of new process that's being asked to be done. The challenge with it is that you don't necessarily have all the data you need to make that kind of decision. So while you may have the RITIS data, and that's great, you may not have the volume data, you know, to match. So, you know, that becomes kind of the challenge. But it's a lofty goal to kind of try and narrow the focus, or to be a little bit more precise and representative with your simulation.
Great, thank you. Do we want to continue to leave this poll open, Joanna? I think we have another poll as well, right?
Yeah, let's just give it another minute. Why don't you go through Zoe's comment or information, and then we'll give folks just another minute to go through that. So
great. Didn't see that one there. We got another comment from Zoe Niederland. Hi, Zoe. Zoe saying the Vermont Agency of Transportation's in the process of working with the CATT lab to include its real-time bus location stop and potentially also on-time performance data into RITIS. So they'd be happy to collaborate with other entities if folks are interested. Yeah, that's great in terms of kind of the multimodal data like Michael was talking about in terms of planes and freight activity. But yeah, a lot of agencies have really robust bus data these days. So I don't know, Michael, if there's anything you want to say about that, or if maybe other agencies have been exploring that as well. I know in the Philadelphia region, I know some of our agencies have that data, but I don't think we've quite gotten to the step yet of kind of integrating it with some of these tools. But personally, I would love to see it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for us to take real time, like GTFS real time data, and put it into RITIS. So if you have GTFS real time for your agency or your transit agency in your region, send us the links and credentials to those feeds, and we can start integrating them in. What we don't have, even though we're archiving all that information, we don't have a ton of analytics to do, you know, look back performance analysis and comparing how roadway incidents might be impacting the transit performance. So those are things to work on.
Yeah, I could see a future work group coming together around that, get some good feedback. I know, again, in the Philadelphia region, we've done some work on signal timing for transit, which can be tricky to understand how it actually benefits transit, because if it's too early, that's not good either, right? So that they're trying to find that sweet spot of signal timing. And Michael, is that something too where the DOT needs to get involved as far as collaboration, or is there additional kind of cost to integrate that data?
Sorry, which data? Are we talking the transit or the signal?
Yeah, the transit data.
No, that's part of the RITIS platform. So we're dependent on agencies to tell us where those feeds are.
Okay.
Okay, I think that we're going to end this one. Thank you to the many people who did participate. At this point, let's see. We're to the user feedback session. So we're kind of in that already. There's one more. It's, you know, as you, I guess we have poll number 6 open. But as you look at that, you can, of course, again, Jesse, you can hopefully
Sure.
we get some folks who have some things that they'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Last chance here for anyone who's got questions, comments, and also, as always, you know, we're looking for great presentations, use cases, things folks have been working on to share at a future meeting. So that's what the poll is about here. Again, thanks to all of our presenters today. Don't see any other questions. Is there anything anybody wanted to comment on or ask questions about with any of the presentations? Anything, Michael, you wanted to note that you maybe didn't get to earlier?
Nothing here, no.
Okay. I guess one question, since we have a couple minutes with Jaimie's presentation. I know in our practice run we talked a little bit, and you touched on it, I think, a little bit in your presentation, of just, you know, how these exhibits have been useful in different audiences. You know, I was curious, have you found kind of some of the ones that you shared, have you had to tweak them, tailor them for different audiences, or do you find that they're pretty intuitive for kind of a range of different audiences that you might be sharing with?
I think they're intuitive. Sometimes you need to give the instruction, you know, just to explain what they're looking at. You know, the color schemes, you know, green good, red bad, in this case purple bad. You know, once you say that, then everyone kind of locks in pretty well. So yeah, I think they have been very intuitive. And so a lot of like the exhibits with lines on them that show kind of patterns of movement, I've used that pretty consistently for a long time, and it's been very helpful for people to kind of understand what they're looking at. You know, we do a lot of traffic models. You get the level service, you know, whether it's HCM or, you know, simulation. Yeah, and that works for a specific audience, but it doesn't translate well to the public. As much as we try to, but if we, you know, show what's happening, I think that really helps. And then what really becomes powerful, just to add to that, is that when you come up with a design solution and then you juxtapose that with the existing and you show what you're changing, that's when the real power comes in. So if we come up with a solution to get rid of the left-hand ramp, then we, you know, flash it back and forth on the screen, and then you can see that all of a sudden all those arrows that are causing congestion go away. And then we back that up again, then you do a simulation that you produce the heat map on, and then you can see like all that red goes away. So again, it kind of lends credibility, and I think you want to have something other than just a complex simulation for people to grab onto, because you need to be able to work back and forth between the concept and what the tool is doing. It also allows you to get through the process a little bit quicker, because you can do a lot of those exhibits very quickly to kind of build up something that might work, and then just advance things without having to wait 6 months for a model to tell you that's not going to work.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I think it's a great point. There's certain, types of data that professionals are used to working with, but that just aren't as intuitive to the public not being familiar with it. And that can, sometimes just lead to more challenges in terms of trying to convey what you're trying to convey. So I think the exhibits you've created are very intuitive, even though they're very data rich, and but I think you can look at it without having to look at all the volumes and really understand all that. You can still just see the colors, or you can, dig in, kind of to the level that people want to.
My wife is a civil engineer, and when we were dating, I did a presentation, and she goes, "I still don't know what you do." So I try. That's my litmus test there.
That's right. It's good to have that. I bet a lot of us have run into that where folks can't quite follow it. So I appreciate it, and I think that the techniques are very easily transferable. Even the thing of understanding that the TMC segments are all different lengths, so some calibration there can really help you understand what may be a bit of an outlier just due to kind of like a short link or a longer link. Those are good techniques to take forward.
And just, I think once you figure that out, and once we figured out what we had, I mean, this has been great. And we use this all the time, whether it's pursuits, projects we're looking at, projects we're doing. And it's kind of, in the last couple of months, I've kind of applied this in about 5 different states. So
It works.
It does.
Makes it easy to use it.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it once again. Hopefully we're getting some good feedback on different presentations that we might have for the future. Don't see any last questions coming in. So I guess maybe Joanna, turn it over to you to wrap us up for the day.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, we want to thank all our presenters and all of you, especially for participating today. And Jesse for hosting the meeting, because we, couldn't do it without you. So if you have any questions, feel free. Of course, you have Michael's email was in the chat earlier. You can message him, of course, always at RITIS. That goes to a big group of folks. And right now it's Mary Grace Parker, but we know that at our next meeting, we should have Cheryl Bradley, our new TISMO director. So that's really exciting for the coalition. So again, thank you for participating, and we will hope to see you at our next meeting, which will likely be early February, right, Michael? That's our usual.
I believe so.
Right. In the meantime, keep an eye out. If you're interested in the Product Enhancement Working Group, message Michael. The RITIS, everybody here should get an invite to the RITIS workshop that's on December 5th. So you may see some of these faces again earlier if you participate in that workshop, and that invite will be coming out soon. And then again, with the Work Zone Working Group, Michael, that's scheduled for October 31st. So again, reach out to Michael for that if you have not been invited, but you are interested. All right, I think that's it. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your participation.